This video is about Francis Ngannou, Dana White, the UFC, and the fight. This is also a video about freedom and respect. Francis Ngannou made the UFC heavyweight division very exciting with his fighting style. The French Cameroon knockout artist worked his way up the division, racking up 9 wins before finishing off Alistair Overeem with that devastating uppercut from God that sent the former champion into the stratosphere and catapulted Ngannou as the next rising star of the UFC heavyweight division. However, decent developments and contract disputes have reached their limits. And as of this recording, Francis Ngannou is now out of the UFC and is a free agent. Dana White said they offered him roughly $8 million, which would make him one of the highest paid UFC heavyweights in their roster, and probably 2 big money fights against John Jones. As per reports, it would have been John Jones, Stipe Miocic, and then John Jones again. Now we know that's not gonna happen because he is out. And John Jones will make his UFC heavyweight debut against Cyril Gane for the vacant UFC heavyweight title. Now let's talk about respect and freedom. If you know Francis Ngannou's life story, much of which can be seen and heard in the Joe Rogan podcast episode that he did, and I will link that episode below, you will meet a man that values freedom more than anything. Freedom is something this man has worked for his entire life. His journey to the UFC was so hard and gut-wrenching that prize fighting for him was relatively more straightforward and a little bit easy. The struggles this man had to go through are what those award-winning movies are made of. Respect is another component in Francis Ngannou's life that he holds dear. He worked hard for everything he has now, and he knows that respect is earned and not given. He smashed and submitted his opponents on his way to the top. He was destroying everyone on his path and becoming today's most dominant heavyweight champion. After his contract expired, according to him, around mid-December, they were going through negotiations, and he had 3 demands. Number 1 was N-Cage sponsorships. Number 2 was health insurance for not just for himself, but for everyone. And then number 3, an athlete advocate's presence positioned to assist fighters. According to Francis Ngannou, in the contract, I'm not free, Ngannou said. In that contract, I'm not an independent contractor. In that contract, I have no rights, I have no power. I hand over all the power to you guys. And I've seen in the past how you can utilize that power. However, Dana White and the UFC had other plans and saw things differently. Of course, these are out of the question from the UFC's perspective, and it will never happen, or at least in our lifetime. In-cage sponsorships are out of the question since they are in an exclusive partnership with Venom and have their own UFC merchandise and apparel line. From a business perspective, this does not make sense at all. As for health insurance, it's been a problem ever since. As far as I know, the only insurance for fighters that I am aware of is the one by the USA Boxing Insurance Program, which can be found in the description. I will link it also. Going back to the UFC as a company, as a corporation, its primary job is to generate profit. Your primary concern is to generate money for your stakeholders and investors. That's your job. That's your primary reason for being. Next point, fighters are employees. I mean, suppose you're a huge draw or have a significant amount of leverage towards the company. That is your bargaining chip for negotiations. In that case, you can make demands for yourself. I mean, talk about Connor, talk about Ronda, but making demands to advocate for others will never happen, or at least in our lifetime, especially when it comes to how a company is run. In relation to the fighter insurance, fight promotions usually foot the bill when fighters get injured during their events. However, combat sports athletes have to get their own insurance, just like many other professional individual sports. Think of golf, tennis, skiing. Okay? You get the drift. Now, athlete advocates, unless you have leverage, the right amount of people under you, or the correct number and proper representation, I mean, forget about it. Yeah, forget about this one. Now that Francis Ngannou is out of the UFC and he's a viable free agent, what are his options? Number 1, we have to determine first how much leverage he has when negotiating fights. This is where his fan base, his social media, his following, the last pay-per-view he headlined, the numbers, right? They're going to crunch those numbers, and that will determine how much he is worth right now. And he better strike a deal fast while everyone's attention or a lot of attention is on his case, because eventually that will fade. And the moment it does, it will be more difficult for him to get more money. Number two is to get into boxing. Francis Ngannou has been very vocal about getting into boxing, and he has openly stated that he wanted to fight heavyweights. So a possible bout against Tyson Fury and or Anthony Joshua. As of this video, Fury has also expressed interest in that as well. If this fight happens, this is Ngannou's biggest payday ever. And this will be a massive boost for boxing, and this will be a big FU to the UFC. And then option number three is to go back to MMA. Ngannou said that he's not closing the doors to the UFC but will entertain offers from different promotions. In his statement, and I quote, Ngannou said he doesn't have a set plan on what's next, but would like to box and then go back to MMA at some point. He said he'd like to fight as early as July. Right now, he said he has drawn interest mostly from other MMA promotions. Ngannou said he's also currently representing himself. He would not rule out a return to the UFC in the future, saying he never really envisioned himself out of the UFC in the first place. Ngannou also said, and I quote, I think I just need some respect. Ngannou said, more respect at least. It's very important. I need some respect. I need some freedom. I need to feel like a man, own my own freedom, control my destiny, decide what I'm gonna do, and I don't want anybody to decide for me. Personally, the UFC will not give in to any fighter demand if it will not benefit them financially. At the end of the day, this is a business. It's all business. It is what it is. As for Francis Ngannou, I hope the boxing match with Tyson Fury pushes through so he gets the payday that he deserves. In terms of MMA promotions, there's definitely Bellator, PFL that will be very welcoming to him. BKFC or Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships is also a viable option, and they would be more than happy to foot his bills and pay him what he demands or he deserves, because he will be a draw in those leagues. There's nothing wrong with what Francis is doing right now. He only has a few good years left in his career, in his fight career, and he wants to maximize whatever he has with it. Now, where do you see Francis Ngannou fighting next? Let me know in the comments. And as always, everybody, thanks so much. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.